Hello and welcome to Tough Talk. This is episode 3. My name's Brian. I have bipolar disorder. And today I want to talk about my diagnosis. Now, I don't have a lot of time today, so I'm going to try to keep this video to about 15 minutes. Which reminds me, I should start my stopwatch. It's going to be tricky for me to tell a story on a clock here. Especially, like, this one's very important. It's a shared experience for anyone with bipolar disorder to have their diagnosis occur in a hospital. When you're in front of a doctor and you're not really sick, they don't get to see you at all times, and they don't get to see you when you're sick, and so you don't often get the diagnosis that way, or through any conventional means. I actually remember between 3 to 6 months before I got my diagnosis, I was at my therapist, who I was seeing at the time because I had serious depression. And I asked him, I really think that I might be bipolar. And even my best friend, thought, he was asking me, are you bipolar? Because he saw some of my ups and downs, and he was there for my first thoughts of suicide and things like that. So he was the first person that I talked to. I was like, I'm feeling terribly this way. I told him, and it doesn't make sense. Could you say anything? Could you help me make sense of this? And so he helped me make sense of it. And so he saw both extremes. When I was really happy, sometimes like after an epic movie that a great blockbuster, something that really hyped me up. He would see that, like, Brian gets really excited, and so he had, I think, the best clue of anyone, and I was inclined to believe him. So I was at my therapist, and I was asking him, what do you think about this? And he was saying no. He said, I don't think you're bipolar at all. He said that you have these ups and downs, but like you steady out. People with bipolar, they don't steady out. They don't come back to neutral. And I'm gonna get into why I think I actually came back to neutral eventually. I don't know if it's gonna be in this video because I only have about 13 minutes to go. So. This may be a terrible mistake. I may have to make another video later. But anyway, so the story starts when I'm back in 2012, and in 2012 I had major depression, and I just could not get motivated, and I had decided to go to California State East Bay. I was gonna pursue a bachelor's degree in creative writing, and that was gonna be a lot of fun. But during the summer, I was really suffering, and at one point, my therapist says, I need you to go get some medication for this. You need to go to your doctor, and you need to get either a referral to a psychiatrist or something, but you need to get treated for this. And so I went to the doctor, and I got a prescription for an antidepressant. And I don't know if you know about this, but there are two classifications for drugs. One is an antidepressant for a unipolar depression, general depression, and another is for bipolar disorder. So they're separate, and the reason they're separate is because if you get treated with a unipolar depression medication as someone with bipolar, it will make you manic. Epically. It will make you very manic. And so I was on that medication for 2 weeks, and I went back to the doctor, and I was okay because that was just the first stage. And so the doctor sees me, and I'm doing a lot better. My depression's treated. But she wanted to increase the dosage. So the dosage was increased, and after 3 days on twice the dosage, I started hurting. You know, like my gut started hurting. I had incredible pain in my stomach. Um, it it what it did is it overwhelmed my stomach with serotonin. And serotonin is the primary neurotransmitter used in the gut for digestion. Um, the antidepressant was serotonin reuptake inhibitor. So it basically prevents the serotonin from going back, and it keeps a lot of serotonin active at once. So, at that point, I was considering going off my medication, but I saw my therapist and he was seeing that I was doing well, and he urged me not to quit taking it, which I think was a terrible mistake. But he urged me not to quit taking it because, in his opinion, I needed to talk to my doctor. I called the doctor. I couldn't get a hold of her at the time, and I was gonna see her next week, so it was like not that big a deal. Um, in my mind, it ended up being a very big deal, and I was also starting to date this new girl at the time, and her name's Stephanie, and I'm still with her. It's been 2 years, 2.5 years, going on 3 this summer. But at the time, I had only been dating her for like a week, and so I go to see her, after 3 days on the higher dosage, and it was just a short, date for a couple of hours on. I don't remember if it was Monday or Tuesday, and so I see her, and I'm completely altered. I look like I look like somebody who is extremely joyful, full of euphoria. I was very euphoric, and I sort of claimed to be related to some deity. um, it was very, in hindsight, it's very humiliating. But it was the medication that was doing that to me. In my brain, the inhibitor for serotonin reuptake flooded my brain with serotonin, and with my bipolar disorder being completely out of balance, it was a chain reaction that just multiplied. And so that was probably the highest manic episode that I think I will ever have in my life. The highest euphoria that I ever achieved or experienced. And again, I hadn't been diagnosed at that time, so I didn't know what was going on. I was very frightened. So I see her, and it's disastrous, and she sends me home. She's like, "You've got something going on. I don't know what it is, but you're scaring me right now. I need you to go." I thought, I thought rather quickly after I start driving home that it's over. That I blew it with this amazing girl. But I had no idea why I blew it, and I had no idea what was wrong. And so at about 8 o'clock at night, I start coming down, because after you are at that high level for a long time, no matter how long you've been at that level, you start coming down. And so I kind of shoot really fast from elevated and feeling good and happy to feeling awful. I start crying in the car as I'm driving, and I also start seeing other things. There's a slight bit of hallucination going on. The road, as I'm driving past all of the paved reflective lights and lines that are painted on the road. it starts having some musical characteristic to me, and so it's really bizarre. But long story short, I still drove well. I didn't cause any traffic violations, but I was completely lost, and I could not remember how to get home. That's a big thing, and that's something that I'm going to start to emphasize. Is that during these episodes, memory loss is severe. As a lot of the timings that are involved with the calculated timings for when to open DNA and when to close it, when to encode a memory, those timings are interrupted. It's like your computer having a variable speed, and what you end up with is corrupted data. So my memory was inaccessible. I couldn't figure out how to get home. So I got lost, and I was so lost. I was circling a neighborhood for about an hour, and so then I pulled over. It's kind of rural. I was on a road in some vineyard, and I pull over to this farmhouse, and they have a front gate, and it's locked. But I'm desperate at that point. I'm really getting sick. I'm feeling awful. A lot of pain in my stomach. The depressive cycle of this was extremely painful, and so I banged on the front gate until they opened, and unfortunately I had frightened them. They didn't really speak English. It was some Asian family that I don't remember or recognize, but they had called the police instead of an ambulance, and so the police arrive, and so they go through the whole thing. I have to get out of my car. I have to stand up, turn around, put my hands up, get down on the ground. I had to cross my hands behind me. They cuffed me. Thankfully I was in a depressive state at this time. If I had been manic, I don't know what would have happened. But they treated me very good, the officers, and the sergeant, he decided to take care of me personally, and so he asked me if I had anyone he needed to contact. I gave him my cell phone. Well, actually, I think he took the cell phone out of my car, but he had my cell phone. I said he could use my cell phone to call my dad, and he called my dad, and they talked about it for a little while, and that's when the sergeant decided he needed to take me to the hospital. He took me to the hospital. He uncuffed me, at a gas station, so I was a little bit more comfortable. At this point, I'm really sad, and I'm crying, and I think that I just broke up with my girlfriend. So a lot is happening, and then I'm in the hospital, and I stay the night there, and I can barely sleep for the first 2 hours, and then I'm back awake, and it's another hypocycle. I'm back to being manic briefly, and I'm very hungry, and I haven't actually eaten since noontime, and it's past midnight, and so I get a sandwich from one of the nurses, and finally I do get to sleep, and I sleep till like 8 a.m. and I wake up, and there's a psych eval in front of me, a psychiatrist, a hospital psychiatrist, and she says, "I'm sorry that I woke you up, but I kind of running out of time here. I didn't want to wake you up while you were sleeping. I know how important sleep is for you while you're this sick." And so she asked me a bunch of questions, and gets a handle on the couple of conditions that I might be, and authorizes that I need to go to another hospital for a longer stay. It's 14 minutes, but I'm going to keep going because this is a good story. I'm doing pretty well recording this. I'm going as fast as I can, covering a lot of the most important information. But so I get authorized to go to another hospital, and I'm still not. It's not registering to me what's happening. Um, and a lot of my memory is not keeping up. You know, I don't really remember what happened last night. I don't really remember what happened that morning. But you know, time is kind of going on, and eventually I get to talk to my family from the hospital, this emergency room, and you know, I talk to them, and I'm going, you know, when am I coming home? And they go, no, you're not coming home. You have to go to another hospital. You have to stay there for a longer period of time. And basically, they put me on 5150, which means that unless a judge authorizes it, I can be held, you know, for 3 days, going on, you know, a week, and then after that, a state judge, a state Supreme Court judge has to authorize a month's stay, and that's something you never want to happen, because after you stay a month, if you don't get well, they consider other options, which aren't very good. So it's very scary. It's very frightening, and you know, I go to this new hospital. The transport was again extremely painful. Like, my heart rate was racing. It was really fast. I don't remember what it was. It was something like 120 to 130, you know, and which is really fast considering I was sitting down. You know, I was laying down. And then the other thing that was very frightening is, you know, my blood pressure. It was 180 and 190. You know, systolic. Which, you know, my hands and my feet were turning purple. All of my skin was red, just red, and you can feel that. And after a couple of hours at that high of a blood pressure, like, you really feel it. Like, your veins start to hurt. You know, everything starts to hurt, and you got I had a lot of pain in my chest. But this was, you know, the withdrawal from the antidepressant, and so there are a lot of interesting characters at the mental hospital. You know, you have in your mind, you know, imagining being around a lot of people who are very sick, a lot of people whose behavior is impossible to understand, and to be, you know, living with them, you know, having my own room next to them, sharing a room with somebody else. They try to pair you with somebody that you will get along with. But I was with another young man like myself, who also had bipolar disorder, and he was in there because he decided he didn't want to take his medication. And I couldn't figure out why. You know, this is my first time getting diagnosed with this, and he's in there because he expressed it to me that he loves being, in his mind, free. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense, you know, because I'm experiencing this. It's extremely painful. You know, yeah, it's nice. The euphoria is nice if you could only have that, but the pain that comes after is extreme. And even so, even if the euphoria is nice, like, it's still impossibly frightening, because you're not in control. You know, I'm not in control of that, and I do not like being helpless to something else controlling me. You know. So I didn't really get along with him very well, and he was very physical, and you know, he was almost just borderline aggressive with me. So they did need to separate me, and I was actually calming down. You know, they they saw that I wasn't a threat to anybody, so they moved me to another ward. And in this ward, you know, I had mostly people with bipolar disorder recovering, you know, and they had gone through the first ward already for, you know, a couple of days just to get steadied out. And once you're steadied out a little bit, they move you to the other ward, and it's much quieter, and it's you know, it was a much better stay. But I was there at that hospital in total for 6 days. It's kind of frightening being there, not knowing when you're gonna get out, not knowing what the conditions are to get out. But I kind of braced myself for it, and I was just, you know, I'm gonna do my best to get back to square one, get back to, you know, being calm and just being me, and just, you know, following all of the rules. And you know, I got out pretty quickly. You know, it was a pretty good turnaround. But yeah, they gave me lithium for the first time, and that took about 4 days for it to get up to a decent level that they could release me. And they had blood tests every day, and they had same day results, and it was good. It was really good. So I came home, and I started taking lithium. And you know, I talked about medication and lithium in the last video, so definitely go check that out if you haven't seen it. It was just shocking. It was shocking to me. It was shocking to my family. There was a lot of adjustment we had to make. I was fortunate that the first psychiatrist that I got out of the hospital was a really good one. That's a story that I will continue in the next video. But yeah, it's quite an experience, and I was quite traumatized from that. You know, it was hard for me to figure out, especially with as amped up as I was on the medication, the antidepressant that was just poison. It's you know, I liken it to chemical torture. You know, it was just like the worst thing in the world for me, and just about every doctor that realized, you know, why this happened, they were like, oh, that's like the worst thing in the world for you. It really was. It really was. But this video is as long as it can be right now, and I'd better stop it here. But if you liked this video, if it educated you in any way about the experience of being bipolar, then please like and subscribe to this channel. Help me help other people understand. I think mental illness is the most misunderstood condition in the United States and in the world right now, and it's something that, you know, we all need understanding for, because these people are not violent, they're not dangerous, they're just sick, and we don't treat people with cancer with the same stigma. We don't treat them with the same fear. Okay, so let's stop treating people with mental illness like that. Okay, help me help the world do that. So thank you. Bye bye.